Vaccine skepticism in Canada is growing, and more parents are waking up to the corruption of the pharmaceutical lobby and hopping off of the vaccine bandwagon, while traditional CBC viewers remain committed and steadfast to the safe and effective mantra.
The vaccines that happened during the pandemic, but whether or not they're mRNA or not, are a miracle of science. They saved tens of millions of lives. And so the fact that that's been politicized is deeply concerning, and we're seeing the effect of that.
For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini, here to highlight some recent data out of Canada showing that parental opposition to mandatory vaccination is up 14% since 2019. An Angus Reid poll found that not only are parents opposing mandatory vaccination in places like schools and daycares in record numbers, but the number of parents with children under the age of 18 who are against vaccinating their children has grown by 13% in that same time period. Now, this survey took a randomized sample of just over 1,600 adults. It asked parents, thinking about your own children, how do you feel about vaccinating them? And the I'm not sure response doubled from 8% in 2019 to 16% in 2024 in this year. Parents that would vaccinate without reservation shrunk from 88% in 2019 to 67% this year. And then there are the parents who are against vaccinating their children, and that shot up fourfold from 17% this year, up from 4% in 2019. The poll rates people on a vaccine acceptance spectrum from max vaxxer to anti-vaxxer. Max vaxxers amounted for 29% of Canadians and are defined as those who feel vaccines are very effective at ensuring better outcomes for both the individual and the community, who support mandatory vaccination for children, and who are not concerned about the potential for significant side effects. On the very opposite end of the spectrum, anti-vaxxers accounted for 14% of Canadians and were defined as those who overwhelmingly feel that vaccination is harmful and unnecessary, that the science isn't settled, and that the body does not need vaccination to build up immunity to these vaccine-preventable illnesses. Then in the middle, there were two groups, the vax proponents at 34% of the population, defined as those who are largely supportive but have some reservations, and then the vax skeptics, those who are skeptical but not dismissive, and they account for 24% of the population. So if we were to lump one end into vaccine hesitant, it would total 38% of the Canadian population, and the other side, vaccine supporters, would be 64%. And that means that just over 1/3 of Canadians are at least skeptical of the settled science. And those that vote left, especially the radically far left Liberals and the NDP, are most likely to be max vaxxers. 44% of Liberal voters and 40% of NDP voters, which far surpasses the average totals for their max vax position, compared to 22% of Conservative voters, where 28 and 22% are either vax skeptics or anti-vax. Especially those under the age of 55 have grown exponentially skeptical of vaccine efficacy to prevent or reduce the chance of catching the disease one is supposed to be vaccinated against. Total number of Canadians who believe vaccinations are not very or not at all effective at reducing the chances of catching these diseases for the community is up nearly twofold, from 8% in 2019 up to 14% this year. The male group skyrockets in the 18 to 34 age bracket from 8% in 2019 to 22% in 2024. And then the 35 to 54 demographic is on par from 9% in 2019 to 23% this year. Women in the same age groups increased too, but not at the same degree. And those aged 55 and up stayed relatively similar. Here, I should note that this age group is referred to as the traditionals, and every 8 out of 10 of them watch the CBC, so glean from that what you will. Canadians are increasingly concerned about the side effects. In 2015, 28% agreed that there is a real risk of serious side effects from vaccinations, a number that grew to 34% this year in 2024. 84% of those classified as anti-vax were concerned about serious side effects, and 73% of them said the science on vaccinations is not clear. All groups felt generally afraid to bring up the topic of vaccines with friends and family, and in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, vaccine passports, mandates, and a whole host of purported to be about public health measures and restrictions that were based on fear and hysteria instead of evidence, Canadians find themselves grappling with the growing skepticism around vaccines and vaccine efficacy, as scientific uncertainties abound with pervasive distrust in big pharma and the way that public health and our institutions shamelessly aligned themselves with pandemic profiteers. We must recognize that avoiding difficult topics only exacerbates division and unease. Canadians, how do we make respecting diverse perspectives and evidence-based debate great again? For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. If you'd like to find out more about why Canadians are skeptical about vaccines and general vaccine programs, you can find a whole host of information-based reports at nommoreshots.ca. At that website, we're also calling on Federal Health Minister Mark Holland to revoke market authorization of the novel COVID-19 mRNA injections. Find out about all of that and more at nommoreshots.ca.